Rich Man and Clever Peasant Story. Once upon a time, lived a very rich man who was arrogant and greedy. He owned fields, farms, and meadows. Hundreds of workers worked for him and were dependent on him for living. Rich Man was so arrogant man that he felt disgust with peasants and other people who worked for him because of their dirty clothes and would not let them come near him. One evening, a group of peasants who worked for Rich Man sat chatting after completing their work. One of them said, "I saw him close up yesterday. I was working and he rode by." Just then another one proudly said, "Well, other day I carried a sack of vegetables up to his house and saw him standing at window." Third peasant laughed and said, "So? What is so great about that? Anyone can look at him and on his horse or at window. If I wish I can sit down with him for meal in his house." "Ha," scoffed others. "Sit down with you for meal. And that's too in his house. This can never happen. Minute he see you, he will order his servants to throw you out," said other peasants, laughing at him. Third peasant said, "I am not lying. I can dine with him if I desire." Others couldn't believe him and challenged him, "Okay. If you can do this, then we will give you 3 sacks of wheat and a bullock, and if you can't do it then you will have to do what we tell you to do for a year." Third peasant agreed. Next day, at noon, when it was close to Rich Man's lunch time, peasant walked up to his house. As soon as Rich Man's servant saw him coming, they rushed to chase him away. "Wait! Wait! I have some good news for your master," cried peasant. Servant replied, "Tell me, I will let him know." Rich Man asked servants to bring peasant into house. Rich Man looked at him in distaste from distance and asked, "What is this good news you have for me?" Peasant glanced at servants and said, "What I have to say is for your ears alone, my lord." Rich Man frowned. He was curious, so he sent away his servants. Now, Rich Man and peasant were alone. After that, peasant leaned forward and asked in whisper, "My lord, what would be price of gold of a piece of gold as large as horse head?" Rich Man stared at him and questioned, "Why would you ask me about gold?" Peasant looked over his shoulder to make sure they were absolutely alone and whispered, "I have my reasons." This made Rich Man very curious. He thought for a while, why would such a poor peasant, dressed in rags, smelling of fields, want to know price of gold? Maybe he had dug up some buried treasure. Rich Man put on kindly voice and asked again, "Tell me, why do you want to know price of gold?" Peasant made a sad face and sighed, "If you don't wish to tell, I shall take my leave because my lunch is waiting for me at home." Rich Man's eye glittered with greed, didn't want to lose this chance to get more money. He wanted to have gold for himself. So he said, "Why you must hurry home for lunch, my friend? I am about to have lunch too. Why don't you join me?" Just then he called his servants and ordered them to make table for lunch and served their master and peasant with finest food. Rich Man looked after peasant as his honored guest and said, "Eat and drink to your fill, my dear friend." After lunch was finished, Lord said, "Now, my friend, run and bring me that piece of gold size of horse head. I will know what to do with it. I will give you loaf of bread in exchange for it." Peasant stood up and said, "No, my lord, I can't bring it." Lord cried, "Why not?" Peasant replied, "Because I don't have it." Lord got angry, "What do you mean by you don't have it? Why did you want to know its price then?" Peasant smiled and replied, "Oh, that's because I was curious. That's it." Lord flew into rage and shouted, "Get out of my house, you fool." Before leaving, peasant said, "I am not fool. I have had an excellent meal at your expense and also won 3 sacks of wheat and a bullock. I couldn't have done it if I were a fool."